Good morning. Um, so we've now completed the Yaakov on the second Perek, the second chapter of Maseches Shabbos. As you may recall, the reason why I started with the second chapter of Shabbos instead of the first one was because since we started shortly after Sukkot, more than half a year ago, I wanted to start with the second Perek of Shabbos since Hanukkah was discussed then. But now we'll go back through the Ein Yaakov on the first Perek of Maseches Shabbos. Now, one thing I've mentioned beforehand about the Ein Yaakov is that since the Ein Yaakov is just a compilation of the Agadic portions of the Gemara and not the halachic portions, oftentimes the Ein Yaakov kind of begins in the middle of a discussion, and therefore can be a little bit difficult to understand what's going on because we're missing the frame of reference and the context. So in the Gemara itself, it had started with a shaila, a halachic query being posed. Bo'u minei Rav mi Rebbe. Rav, who was one of the leaders of the first generation of Amoraim, of Talmudic sages, and Rav originally was born and grew up in Eretz Yisrael, and subsequently moved to Bavel, to Babylonia, where he achieved greatness. But as a child living in Eretz Yisrael, he was a student of Rebbe Yehuda Hanassi, the person who edited the Mishnah, and he was from the last generation of Tanoim, of Tanoic sages. And so Rav asked Rebbe the following question: Hitino chavero ochlin umashkin. If somebody, rather than picking up, in this case, food and drink, but had somebody load the food and drink on his body, meaning in order to be considered to be carrying on Shabbos, there are two necessary steps, well, really three. But the first one is akira, and that is you have to remove the object from a place of rest. Then you have to either carry it 4 amos, 4 cubits in a public area, or you have to transfer it from a Rishus HaYachid, from a private domain, to a Rishus HaRabim, to a public domain. And once you either carry it 4 amos in the public domain or transfer from one domain to another, you have to do hanocha. And that means putting down the object in its new location. Now, this explanation I gave you is a little bit of an oversimplification of things that are covered over a lot of pages in the Gemara, but essentially those are the rules. So let's say the person himself did not pick up the objects. Someone else put them on his person. And then Vahotzion, then he walked outside with them. So he didn't actually pick up the objects, but he was standing still when the objects were put on him. And then he went from one area to another with those objects on his body. And the question Rav was posing to Rebbe is that considered to be an akira? Does that constitute that the person himself started the transition of moving the objects from a place of rest to their final place, and therefore would be considered to be a violation of Shabbos? Or in this case, do we say no, since he didn't actually pick them up to begin with, we're missing the first step, and therefore technically it is not a violation of Shabbos? That was the question that Rav had posed to Rebbe. Then there's a short discussion in the Gemara with Rebbe's response to Rav. After it was done, Amar le Rebbe Chiya le Rav. Rebbe Chiya said to Rav. Now, Rebbe Chiya was a contemporary of Rebbe, and he was Rav's uncle. So Rebbe Chiya said to Rav, Bar Pachti. And Rashi says that Bar Pachti means son of great people. Lo aminalach, haven't I told you that Kikoi Rebbe Bahai Mesechta, when Rebbe Yehuda Nasi is stationed in one Masechta, in one tractate of the Talmud, and he's studying and teaching that tractate, Lo Tishayla b'Masechta Achriti, you shouldn't pose him a question in another Masechta. Dilma Lavadaite, because since the other Masechta, the other topic is not on his mind, he might not, have on his mind the issues that you're raising. De'ilav de Rebbe Gavra Rabahu, if not for the fact that Rebbe Yehuda Nasi is a great person, the fact that you asked him a question on a topic he was not in the middle of studying, kasafte, you may have embarrassed him. De mishani loch shinuya, de lav shinuya, because he may have given you an answer that was not a proper answer. Hashtemias shapir mishanilach. Now, however, it turns out he did give you a good answer. So there's a few points over here that I'd like to bring out. First of all, on this idea that Rebbe Chiya referred to his nephew Rav as Bar Pachti, which again Rashi explained, son of great people. So the Nitzotze Or, written by Rav Ruvain Margolius, says that if you did not come from a prominent family, if you didn't come from a family of Torah scholars, then I might understand why you asked a question when it really wasn't the right time to ask. Because you might have felt that since you are someone who is not well known and a young student, you have to make a name for yourself. And therefore, the only way to make a name for yourself is by showing how smart you are by asking this question. And then I can understand why you would have even asked the question at the inappropriate time in order that your voice should be heard. But the fact of the matter is you come from a very prominent family. And when you're sitting there in front of Rebbe Yehuda Nasi, everybody knows who you are. So you have no need whatsoever to speak out of line in order to get attention. Now, I will mention also that in Tanakh, we find the word pechasecha, which refers to a governor. So this idea that Bar Pachti means son of great people, that would seem to be based in Pashat Pshat on the psukim in which the word Pachti, like Hakariveyu Nola Pechasecha, is one word of that use, that Bar Pachti means son of great people. The Ben Yehoyada wants to suggest something a little bit different, because as I mentioned beforehand, Rebbe Chiya was Rav's uncle. It was a complicated relationship, which I'm not going to get into right now, but let's just say he was Rav was Rebbe Chiya's sister's son. So the Ben Yehoyada suggests that Pachsi is kind of slang for achosi, the pei replacing the aleph. Why would a pei replace the aleph? So the Ben Yehoyada says that because pei is the final letter of the word aleph, so it could be that the letter pei was used to substitute in a sort of slang for the word son of my daughter, son of my sister. Instead of saying ben achosi, he says instead ben pachsi. Now, in terms of the issue of asking something sort of in the wrong time, so in the 6th Perek of Pirkei Avos, it lists the 48 ways to acquire Torah. And one of the 48 ways to acquire Torah is shoel ke'inyan. You ask a question which is on topic. So over here, where at the time Rav asked this question, Rebbe was studying a different topic. And so therefore Rav was not being shoel ke'inyan. He was not asking something on topic, and that would seem to indicate a lack of somebody who is trying to be a serious and successful student. Rav Kook points out that really what the Gemara is showing us is a difference between someone who knows a topic and someone who is a thorough expert in a topic. And I see this very often when I'm dealing with people that I have to deal with in certain work situations. It's especially true sometimes when you're dealing with bureaucrats, where people may know their job well, but they lack the understanding to see an entire full picture. And therefore, whenever you come to them with a question or a problem, the solutions they offer are not really full or successful solutions because they can only look at one piece of the puzzle at a time. So you come to them with a question and they can only see what's directly in front of them and deal with that. And they may be missing out on something because they don't see how this one puzzle piece fits into the entire picture. And for a person like that, if he's in the middle of learning one Masechta, you better not come to him with a question from another Masechta, because he is focused on a completely different puzzle piece right now, which has nothing to do with this puzzle piece you're coming over to him about, and never the twain shall meet. And if you ask him a question about X, and he's so focused on Y, his mind is too far removed from X to really answer that question intelligently, and he is liable to offer an incorrect answer. As opposed to someone like Rav, who sees and understands the entirety of the Torah, the entirety of the Talmud, as one entire organism, and understands and sees the connections from one part to another, and sees it as a whole, then there's no such thing as, well, he's holding over there, don't ask him a question over here. Because he sees and understands and experiences the entire corpus of Torah as one. Once again, this shir was sponsored in memory of Chana Devora Bas Avraham. Thank you very much for listening.